Today is Thursday, July 23rd, 2026, and I am here with Benjamin, and we are going to talk about the real reality of retiring from football.
Chapter 3 Who Am I? The morning of June 19th, I put the mask on before my feet hit the floor. Just like every other morning for the past 9 months, strong, brave, courageous, moving forward no matter what the night before had taken from me. My body was exhausted, 9 months of pushing it harder every day with no results, or worse, the neural pathways I was deepening every day were the wrong ones. The range of motion in my right arm and right leg were getting more locked into the wrong patterns the harder I worked. My body knew that before my mind would let me admit it. I had no idea the mask was about to come off. I believed it would stay in place through the conversation I was about to have later that morning with my teammates, telling them that I had to retire. The mask had held through everything else. Why would today be different? I went to summer strength and conditioning workouts, and the routine was the same, the drills were the same, the heat was the same. I was trying to keep everything bottled up the way I had for 9 months, and I could feel the cap coming off through warm-ups, through the weight room, outside in the heat. Everything was the same, except I was walking through it knowing that later today a neurosurgeon was going to tell me out loud what I already knew, that football was over. Before we started warm-ups, I pulled our head coach aside. After the workout today, I need to tell the team something. He looked at me curious. He was new, his first season at the school. He hadn't been with us the year before, hadn't seen what I'd been through. He didn't know me well enough yet to read what was underneath the request. But he trusted me enough not to ask. He just nodded. The workout went like any other summer day. At the end, we gathered in the gym. The head coach addressed the team. He asked the football players to hang back for a minute. Ben has something to tell you guys. The coaches were standing behind the players, curious, waiting, the same way my teammates were waiting for what I was about to say. The team was on one knee in a half circle around me. From my left side to my right, the whole team right there in front of me. I began to speak. Guys, later today I'm going to see my neurosurgeon, and he's going to tell me that I have to retire from football. As those words came out, something shifted. Everything that had been in third person became first person. This life was being taken. This is me. This is my life. This is my story. And there's nothing, no amount of fight, no certainty I can show to get it back. The full body sobs started, the shaking knees started, the mask I had worn for 9 months started coming off in front of my entire team. My teammates didn't wait for me to finish. They didn't wait for permission. They just stood up. The ones closest first, then more, then the rest of the team. And they grabbed me, not to hold me in place, to hold me up, because my knees were giving. Because the mask had fallen completely off and the broken was pouring out and they knew I was about to collapse to the ground. So they held me, all of them, holding me up while I fell apart in front of them. For the first time since my stroke, my broken internal world was shown externally. Not hidden, not held inside where nobody could see it, just there, in their arms. Real. From the moment I broke down in the gym, the rest of that day is hazy. That's the only way I can describe it. The trauma point, you're one person before, you're someone else after. The hours that follow blur into something the brain doesn't fully record because you're still trying to survive what just happened. I drove a teammate home that morning, dropped him off. I went home myself. And somewhere in those hours, the mask went back on. But it was different now. It wasn't about getting back anymore. It was about showing up for my teammates the way they had shown up for me when I fell apart on that gym floor. Every morning at 8 a.m. through the rest of the summer, I was there. Summer workouts, summer camp, every single day, not for me, for them, sweating with them, hurting with them, being tired with them. in the film room, in the weight room, after practice, during practice, wherever they were, I was there. I owed it to them. So every day I showed up for them, not allowing the mask to slip off again, not in front of them. The mask was back on harder than before, but underneath showing up, I was drowning. Every day in that weight room, that locker room on that same field, these were places that had a purpose. These were places where I was supposed to be becoming something. Now I was just there, watching from the side instead of fighting on the field, being there for them instead of being with them. How do I survive this purposelessness? How do I cope with showing up every single day to the place where I was supposed to become something only to just watch? I needed an escape, not from my teammates, from the mask that was forcing me to show up, forcing me to watch, forcing me to pretend that being on the sideline was enough when everything in me knew it wasn't. The harder the mask sat, the more it required to stay on. Early in August, just before camp, was the first time I drank alcohol. I was walking around a friend's backyard by the pool, and I kept repeating one sentence to myself over and over again. The world has color again. The world has color again. The world has color again. Not the world outside, the internal world, the one that had turned gray the moment my dad said those words in the living room 2 months earlier. I found relief in the color alcohol created, and I didn't know yet what I was willing to do to find it again. And then the season began. It was one of the first home games of the season. I was in the weight room getting a short lift in before we headed out to the stadium for pregame. Jersey on, shorts, tennis shoes. Up to that point, I was always with people, always wearing the mask. But standing in that weight room before pregame, I was alone. Just me with myself. I didn't have to wear the mask. There was nobody to wear it for. I finished a set with the dumbbells and looked up into the mirror behind the rack. I locked eyes with myself, and in my own eyes I could see the question, who am I now? The jersey was the same one I'd been wearing when I was injured. The weight room was the same place where I'd been chasing the dream. But the dream was gone, and I was still wearing the jersey anyway. No football pants, no cleats, no helmet, just me in a jersey that didn't mean anything anymore. Looking back at myself in the mirror, asking the question I didn't have an answer for. Who are we? With the beginning of the season, the pattern began. Survive the week, drink Friday, drink Saturday, survive the next week. It was late in the season, late October. A player on the opposing team went down, not moving. Their trainers came running out onto the field, and not even a couple minutes later, the ambulance drove down onto the field. They wheeled out the gurney. They took his face mask off his helmet, stabilized his neck, and loaded him into the back of the ambulance. I watched all of it from one knee on the sideline, the way players do when someone is injured, the whole sideline on one knee. And I had the stare, the 1,000-yard stare, my mind running through one thing over and over. What if I had been treated that way? An ambulance driven onto the field, me loaded onto a gurney, immediately stabilized, on the way to the hospital before anything else. Would I still be playing football right now? It is a question I can never answer. So that night I drowned it out the only way I knew how. I'd drink until I didn't feel the weight, until the pressure of the upcoming week didn't exist anymore. Blackout drunk. And for those hours, I wasn't the person who'd lost everything. I wasn't wearing an empty jersey. I wasn't standing in that weight room asking who I was anymore. I was just gone, and gone felt like the only way to survive the coming days. On Sunday mornings, the dread arrived before my eyes even opened. The whole week stretching out in front of me, 5 days of holding the mask in place without letting it slip. 5 days until Friday night came back around and I could take it off the only way I knew how. That was how I survived the fall of 2018. November. The season ended after 10 games. We didn't make the playoffs. And suddenly there was nothing left to show up for. That Friday night, I drank the same way I'd been drinking all season. Saturday night, the same. The valve still worked, the relief still came. But Sunday morning, the dread arrived harder than it ever had. The week stretching out in front of me wasn't 5 days of holding the mask anymore. It was the rest of my life, with no team to show up for, no identity waiting on the other side, no external attachment to hold on to and tell myself who I was. I wasn't a player anymore. I'd stopped being that in June. I'd been a coach through the fall. That was the identity I'd borrowed, the one that let me stay in the weight room, on the sideline, in the film room. But the season ended and the coach identity ended with it. I was just a student now, not a student athlete, not a student coach, just a student. For the first time in my life, that was all I was. My pre-stroke self would have been preparing for Division I football. That was the trajectory, but the stroke took that, and now there was nothing waiting. That first Monday, I picked up my good friend on the way to school, and I asked him the only question I had left. Now what? We're no longer football players, so what are we? I was hoping he had an answer, because I didn't. For the first time in my life, I had no idea who I was without football telling me.